Today is the third day of the January 1986 7-day retreat. We'll talk about two questions that were brought up. Actually, I had thought of talking in depth about the self, but maybe these two questions will lead us precisely there. Questions brought up in meetings, not quoted verbatim. One person asked something like this: as far as I can tell, practically all of my thoughts, or all of thoughts, are concerned with desire. Either desire for something or not for something else, or away from something, all of it somehow or other involved with desire. Wanting or not wanting. Is there any difference between this and questioning? In other words, is questioning more thinking? And is it also motivated by desire? All thinking is virtually involved with desire. What about questioning? Is questioning thinking? And is it motivated by desire? One has asked a question. Why has one asked it? Does one desire an answer? I think as soon as one asks a question, desiring an answer, one cannot look at the question. What is paramount in importance is to get an answer, which is the very conditioned activity of our brain. Since we were little, when questions were asked of us, or we were asking questions of our parents or teachers, the answer was important, to give it or to receive it. This question is question thought. Thinking. Is thinking involved in questioning? One can look at this right now. We can look at this together, jointly, right this instant. The question is questioning thought, thinking. Obviously, there's thought involved in even formulating the question. There's a bunch of words. Is questioning thinking? And it rests on knowing what thinking is. And what questioning? No, it doesn't assume what question is, asking what questioning is. The question itself has come out of thinking and uses words to be formulated. But if one looks whether questioning is thinking, has to look, regardless of how the question was formulated. Right now, wondering whether questioning is thinking. Doesn't one have to put all thinking aside and look and listen? Because if one thinks, yes, questioning is thinking, or no, questioning is not thinking, that comes out of thinking. But it's not questioning. That's knowing. That's answering. I'm really seriously wondering whether questioning is a thought process. I have to stop and look. Can one do that? A question may arouse thoughts, but that's not questioning. Questioning is not knowing. That's why it's questioning, because it is not knowing. If one knows the answer, one doesn't have to question. And then the question had another part to it, namely, is it desire that motivates the question, or is questioning desiring? We dealt with it in saying that if one desires an answer, it's not questioning. Then it is just looking for the certainty or temporary pseudo-certainty of an answer. But if I really want to find out something, I cannot desire an answer. That distorts the questioning. It influences the openness of inquiry. One can question desire itself. Supposing there is this strong desire to have an answer, to have certainty about what questioning is, and there's a real moving force that propels this question. One wants to have certainty, whether it is or it isn't, because one wants to be sure what one is doing here is not desire. Maybe based on ideas, we won't go into this right now. But what is desire? Isn't it having an end result in mind? Certainty. Certainty of knowing. And that being attractive, one is so uncertain all the time, so unsure, so confused. And the ideal of certainty looms large. So one desires that. Not everybody may desire this, but we'll take it for the moment that one desires the certainty out of the pain of one's constant uncertainty and confusion. And this ideal stimulates energy to get it, to find a method, a teacher, a system, to bring one that certainty. Then it's not questioning, is it? Then it's doing something to get something. Energies aroused to attain and to do in the process what it takes, or what somebody says it takes to attain. One can see that by questioning desire. that this is so, not adopt the words that have been said here, but to look for oneself when desire comes up for something. What the whole process is. Not parts here and there, but the whole process. Or maybe out of a feeling of inadequacy or boredom, one fixes onto a goal which would get one out of this feeling of inadequacy and boredom. Enlightenment. And then desiring that, and this desire and the goal arousing energies, and willpower is energy in the service of desire for a goal. That's what will is. One can look at it, examine it for oneself. It does not have to take over anything. So since one doesn't take over anything, one will question everything that has been said. Maybe one has been questioning in the process. Was that questioning beset by desire? Or was it just looking at something without any prejudices, without any preconceived ideas? Question into anything, preconceived ideas are a blinder. They make questioning impossible. Desires distort the questioning and make it go in a certain way. That's not free-flowing questioning. One cannot know any end result if one is truly questioning. Because the end result to a mind that is so easily deceived and so easily deceives itself, end result is lethal to know about the end result. It will influence the investigation. One can see that for oneself time and time again. If one wants something very badly, one will attain that, whether it's real or not, whether it's imagined or not. But questioning, pure questioning, does not know an end result. Just wondering in this case whether there is desire in questioning. And if it is found to be there, if one sees it and it can be seen, yes, I do want something with this question, then to look at desire. What is it? One has to look at it if one is serious with the question. Of whether there is desire in questioning. And one has to know what one is talking about, but so often we talk and use words and we don't really know, we haven't really made clear to ourselves what it is that we're talking about. And what it is that we want to find out. We're perfectly able to ask and answer without really knowing what we mean, without even settling among ourselves what we mean by something. That's why discussions go so haywire. Everybody meaning something else and wanting something else. So this is a good question, whether when one is talking, communicating, questioning, whether one is really clear about what one is saying, clear about the meaning of the words that one is using, which takes real care and attention and space and time. Not feeling rushed to give an answer, to say something, but to look. We've been so raised in this cloud atmosphere of words, and we have attained facility of using them without quite realizing what we're saying. And if we're not careful in the use of words, and someone else will misunderstand or get hurt, feelings will be triggered and settle as traces in the mind. And there's already antagonism. So often one realizes one has said something and hasn't meant at all to hurt another person, yet another person has gotten hurt. But in looking, what did I say? One is careful, one may see, it may not be the case all the time, that one was not using words carefully. One was using them automatically, they just sputtered out. Along certain very preset lines, which have been sort of trained into one, or one has trained oneself in them by reading, by hearing advertising speeches. Sort of word lines get formed which come out, have very little to do with what one really wants to say. It really takes work and intensity of looking and caring to bring together word lines and what one really wants to say. And it also takes to see what one wants to say. One may not even know what one wants to say. Just say something. We do that so much, don't we? Because then there's to look, why do we want to talk? Is it to overlay some feeling of dis-ease, discomfort? We'll leave this for the moment and come to the next question, which was, can there be any peace in the self? Or is peace only possible if there's no self? Can the self in itself find peace through its self-centered efforts? Or can there only be peace when there is no self-centered effort, no self-structure? If that question really moves one, grips one, doesn't one need to observe self-centeredness, self-interest, self-defense in motion, in action? Observe it not in retrospect so much. Most of the time that's all we're left with. Observing it in retrospect, trying to piece together what did we do. and memory is not very accurate, very selective. Stuff is screened out. So we have very skimpy evidence to go on when we try to look back of what we said. Even though we become very adamant, saying, I said that. But did we really? So the only real viable way of being intimate with this self-process, self-centeredness, self-defense, self-assertion, fear, is to observe it as it happens, as it is triggered and wants to run its course. Because again, to come back to the initial question, to desire that peace without self, without understanding the self, can only bring a subscribing to methods and creating illusions for oneself. The illusion of peace, the illusion of no self, of altruism or unselfishness. And the reliance on people to tell one how one's self is progressing or one's unselfishness. How can anybody tell one? People can tell one plenty, but one has to see for oneself. To see for oneself, the word itself seems to imply that the self sees, but the self doesn't see. The self remembers and projects and thinks from memory, projections into the future. But it doesn't see. As long as one is caught up in, energies are caught up in self-centeredness, self-interest, self-defense, there's no seeing. There's only being caught up in that and in the dynamics of it, in the energy of it. To go get it or get away from something. To protect oneself or lash out. Or to believe that somebody says you did something wrong, you're no good, and to take that into the image, or to have the image of being a loser confirmed by other people. It's actually one real characteristic or criterion of self, that it needs constant, unending confirmation from others that it really is what it thinks it is. We learn that very early in our life to be liked, do things to be liked and looked gently upon by our parents, our teachers. And they tell us either gently that we're good or roughly that we're bad. Often very painfully we're told that we're bad. So the images are impressed upon the mind through reward and punishment. We're told what we are all the time and what we're not, what we should be, from almost day one. And compared, look at your brother, how he's doing it. You want to be like your older sister, don't you? So very, very early, with forceful and gentle methods, images, self-images are imprinted upon the young mind, the young brain, of what I am. And I may find pleasure and security in what is called good images here, being good. It's not, an image is an image. It's neither good nor bad. It's what it is. Whether it is an image of being a good girl or a bad girl. And one can find pleasure or security, a pseudo-security, in either one of them. Maybe one has been shunted or pushed aside, compared unfavorably so much that one really lives up to this image of being a loser, bad, always into trouble. I remember a little friend of our son's that was in pre-kindergarten and kindergarten. He would always walk in front of our window. He lived several houses down, back and forth, and he seemed to be such, just from the looks of a very self-sufficient little guy. And it was amazing. Every time his mother talked about him, she said, "He's a monster." You just hear that one time too often and you really believe it. And then what can you do but live up to that? Be that. Because with that you exist in your mother's mind. I'm not saying that this particular mother said it all the time. But it's happened to all of us. It happens to us now. It's taking place now. Trying to act out this image in our relationship with other people of what we are or what we want to be treated as. Very often still childlike images, wanting to be treated like a little girl or little boy, particularly in a time of stress or one has done something that one feels bad about. So many adults have children's voices, speak like little girls and boys. Maybe a self-protective mechanism, or maybe just an age-old habit of that's the safest way to be. Can one be aware, become aware of the way we talk and act in the presence of this person and that person, because there may be an immediate change of image. To one person, one is the little girl. To another person, one is the strong woman. Or to groups in which one moves. In one is the spiritual being, whatever that is. And then back in the office, in the business or so, one is anything but a spiritual being. One is competitive. The way one ought to be there, the way one is expected to be. That's a question that was brought up recently in this German retreat by someone. Actually, this man came from Norway. He was a counselor working on a team of counselors for a hospital. He was very interested in this whole thing of self-image. And he came to a meeting and said, "I'm sent by the hospital often as a representative to conferences, and I'm expected by my employer to present an image. And looking at it more, he said, even in my work, I'm expected to present an image. This is what I'm supposed to do." And he reflected further. If I didn't have this image, maybe I wouldn't have this job. If that image dropped away, would I still be employed? Would I be sent to conferences? And we talked at length about whether it's possible to perform a function and perform it with all one's being, wholeheartedly. And he said he loved what he was doing. And yet, none of this extra thing of being somebody through performing this function. At a conference, if one reads a paper, what does that have to do with being somebody at the same time, getting applause or stepping into some kind of a hierarchy into which even conferences arrange themselves? A sociologist once told me this when I was studying sociology. He said every conference has a hierarchical structure. At that time I was objecting to it because I knew differently. I thought I did. But he had worked on that. He was an expert on it. And he said the sequence in which papers are given is one way the hierarchy is reflected. Who's number one to give a paper, who number 2, 3, and so forth. All right, so I'm sent to a conference, I'm given place number 26. Does it have to matter? If it does matter, let's look at it immediately and clear it up. Whether this paper, what I'm trying to say about children in stress, that's what I've studied, that's what I want to talk about, children under stress. Whether it has anything to do whether I'm number 26 or number 1. But if it does have to do with it, then what good is it to talk about children under stress? What good will this do? The children, the conference, and the whole world. If I'm under stress of being slighted, or if I'm elated, boosted by being given place number 2, and don't see that, what kind of a psychotherapist am I? I may be a psychotherapist, but not familiar with the psyche as it operates in myself. The same thing of the image that one presents to one's patient. Why does one have to present any image? It's part of the learning, of the socialization process, I guess, of a therapist, just as it is, there's a socialization process for the doctor. Somebody who's just gone through med school told me in quite detail about this, that medical school is by no means just imparting information, but it's a molding and socialization process of how a doctor is to compose himself and act at the bedside among colleagues in the hierarchy and so forth. So I may have been trained to assume a certain posture in front of my patient, but I don't have to conform to that. When the door closes, then it's just 2 human beings, isn't it? Which means already during the socialization process in school, I have to be aware that the mind doesn't get conditioned unawares, or else that conditioning runs automatically. I may say, I'm no different, I'm on the same level, but I have learned certain behavior patterns, which are very readable to the patient, very obvious, and influence him to look up to me as somebody who is superior, who knows, who's more intact, who can help him. So one must not say, I have none of this. I meet a person face to face. One must look how one meets a person, and also listen to how the person looks at one, approaches one, talks to one. And can one discuss it then? Or has one chosen this profession as a therapist to have this position? So many people going into therapy these days, one therapy or another, psychological, physical, acupuncture, or all kind of different therapies. Why are so many people going into this? What is the attraction? Everyone will say, I want to help people, or there's so much need. I don't say everybody will say this, but that's the usual answer one gets. But one has to look why one wants to go into this. And it's not a static thing, it is to be observed as one goes, as thoughts flash through the mind, as one talks, reacts. And not assume anything, not assume that one is clear of that. One may be clear of it today, and the next minute one is full of it again. It's a complex thing. It's not just the image of being somebody, the position but also the content it gives to one's life to help people. And who are these people? We asked that the first night. Who are the others? Does one see them as separate? Not a separate body. Here I have to bring this in. One person mentioned in a meeting that this person's concept of ego includes, as he said, the first person of conjugation. I am doing this, I am going. In other words, everything that emanates from this body-mind is for this person ego. And then one can misunderstand each other very quickly. Here, when we refer to self or ego or me, we refer to this psychological memory structure of me, which generates all the desires and fears. Not the hereditary talents per se, but the ownership of them, feeling these are my talents, that is me. To have the brain function in a certain way and be able to use it without deriving status or prestige from it is quite another thing. That's not ego. But who can really work that way, function that way, without immediately being the owner of that, the doer of the deeds, or the sufferer of the sorrow? I think it is possible to work without this constant self-image. I don't think it's necessary at all. It's nothing but a hindrance, a difficulty, a problem, and the very crux of separation. And if one loses one's job because one does not project the image that the institution wishes to project through one, why should one continue working with that institution? Participate in the falsehood, in the pretense and deception. The question that was put was, can there be peace within the self, or is peace only possible when there's no self? I think we already touched upon this fact that self-image is not a static thing. One image may be static, but there is an infinite number of self-images in flux as we move from relationship to relationship, from one condition or environment to another. And these different images that we project or feel we have to project, most of the time it happens unawares or only partially aware. These images are in conflict with each other. In one environment, one wants to appear as a selfless person, in another environment, get what one can get. And that gnaws, that conflict gnaws. Feels confused. Or, put it the other way around, one wants to get this thing, and at the same time one feels I should be selfless without desires. There's a clash of images, and therefore a clash of energies. No peace. And if there's another image in oneself of the peacemaker, he's got an endless job. Constantly patching up what constantly is falling apart. And the result are migraine headaches or other physical ailments, which one then takes to a psychotherapist or a physical therapist to take care of. But the cause of it isn't touched, it's just manipulation. The underlying cause is self-centeredness, not just in one self-centered, but in dozens of them, each in collision with the other. Does one see that? Does one get a glimpse of that? One can remove oneself from the scene and go into a spiritual retreat or something. Practice mind concentration, manage to concentrate on something, energy arising, and that energy for the time being will silence all thoughts. But is that peace? Or has the whole thing been contrived by the self? In this concentration, which arouses these tremendous energies, there's no understanding of the self that brought one there in the first place. And then if during the daily life there is conflict or problems, will one quickly concentrate on one's mantra or breath to push the conflicts aside? Then there is no airing, understanding of anything. And yet that's what we do most of the time with our spiritual practice. People have told me this, that after years and years of having long dropped a certain practice, still bringing up this practice at the moment of conflict, concentrating on it in order to be rid of the conflict. Which is the perpetuation of conflict. There's no resolution, no this dissolution of it. True dissolution of it. I don't know whether we've answered the question whether there can be peace within the self. One has to look. And if there is a genuine insight into the self, meaning not thinking of what somebody else has said about the self and repeating it to oneself, but seeing it in action so clearly as the daylight's icicle there hanging in the sun, it's that clear. Does that insight have anything to do with the self? Does this come from the self? Is that self-centered? Or does it merely illumine self? And at that instant of insight, does self-centeredness persist? Or is it seen for what it is and it drops? It cannot maintain itself. There's no one there to maintain it. Because insight only happens when there is no self maintaining itself, asserting or defending itself. It only comes when the mind doesn't know. It's in a state of not knowing, questioning without knowing, questioning without the desire to attain a goal. When the self-structure is without life and blood and energy, then what peace is there to seek or to make? And everything is precisely as it is this instant. And nothing is in conflict with a self which isn't there, it's just seeing. And then what is also not what one thinks it is. It's not with words or explanations, and therefore there's change. Possible to listen so still, so quietly. Without wanting anything, because that's not quietness, that's thrashing about, that's grasping for something. Just listening without knowing. Wondering. In a state of wondering, not in a state of knowing. And then whatever comes up inside or out, what is it? And it can be seen for what it actually is, not for what one thinks it is or should be. in this still listening, in this quiet listening, if a word does come up, can it be seen as a word and dropped? Because the word isn't the real thing. If it's seen as a word, then it's finished. But if it is seen as a word, one thinks, oh, I only think in words. I cannot get rid of these words, and there are more words. And more separation again. Can that be seen? As it happens. And let go. We will end here for today.